Vintage amplifiers like this are covered in knobs and switches that have names like loudness and subsonic, high cut, tone defeat, attenuator, tape monitor, mono, reverse. Now, if you grew up with gear like this, most of that probably feels normal. But if you didn't, it can look like the cockpit of a spaceship. But these controls are not just decoration. They were built for a time when a stereo system really was a system. You had a turntable, a tuner, a tape deck, or maybe two, multiple speakers, different sources, maybe different rooms, different recordings, and different problems. Today, we're going to walk across the front panel of this Kenwood KA-7100, and we're going to answer the big question. What do all these vintage stereo controls actually do? And I'm designing this like a follow-along episode. So if you have a vintage amplifier or a receiver of your own, grab it, power it up safely, put on a record, tape, the tuner, CD player, Bluetooth adapter, whatever you normally use, and test these controls with me as you go. Keep the volume reasonable because we're learning today, not bugging the neighbors. Welcome back to the studio. Now today we're going to do a practical walkthrough of vintage amplifier controls using this Kenwood KA-7100 kind of as our example. This is a beautiful silver face Kenwood with a big volume knob, tone controls, filters, tape controls, loudness, speaker switching, and a few features that can confuse people if you're not used to older stereo gear. Now this episode is not only about this Kenwood. A lot of the same controls show up on other brands like Pioneer, Sansui, Marantz, Technics, Yamaha, you name it. Now, these labels might change a little between different brands, but the ideas are usually the same. So as we go, I'm going to explain what each control does, when you would probably use it, and when you probably wouldn't. And for a few of them, I'll also give sound examples so you can actually hear what changes. Let's start on the left side of the panel. First up is the speaker selector. On this Kenwood, the choices are off, A, B, and A plus B. This tells the amplifier which speaker terminals on the back are active. If your speakers are connected to the A terminals, set it to A. If your speakers are connected to B, set it to B. If you have two pairs of speakers connected and the amplifier is designed to handle it, A plus B will run both sets. And off, well, that just means the speaker outputs are off, like you're listening through headphones. Now that sounds obvious, but this is one of the first things to check when an amp powers on but you hear nothing from the speakers. Before you assume the amp has serious problems, check the speaker selector. Now one caution here, be careful with A plus B. Running two sets of speakers at once changes the load on the amplifier. Some amps are fine with it under the right conditions and some are not happy at all, especially with lower impedance speakers. If you only have one pair connected, use the setting for that pair. No need to make the old Kenwood do extra push-ups. Below that, we have the power switch and the headphone jack. Now, the power switch, pretty self-explanatory, but old switches can get dirty or intermittent, so if a unit flickers or it cuts in and out, or if you have delayed response, the switch or the power circuitry may need attention. The headphone jack is something that's also worth mentioning. Some amplifiers will cut off the speakers automatically when headphones are plugged in, but some don't. Some expect you to turn the speaker selector to off if you only want headphone listening. So if you're testing one of these late at night and trying to be polite, always make sure the speakers are not still playing. That's a mistake that you usually only make one time. Now, headphone jacks can also get oxidized, so if the sound cuts in and out, or if one channel disappears when you're using headphones, the jack may just need a proper cleaning. Now, a lot of vintage audio problems are not grand failures. They're dirty contacts, old switches, and sometimes oxidation. It's not glamorous, but it's very real. Before we keep working across the front panel, I want to take just a second to thank today's sponsor, PCBWay. Now, one of the things that I love about vintage gear like this Kenwood is that it reminds you how physical electronics used to feel. Real switches and real signal paths, real boards that are doing real work. And when you're repairing, modifying, or even recreating parts for old equipment, having a good board made can save you a lot of headaches. Now, PCBWay, they make custom printed circuit boards, front panels, CNC parts, 3D prints, and even small production runs for projects like audio adapters, replacement control boards, relay boards, test fixtures, and little interface circuits that we use here in the studio. In fact, I just got a batch of boards back that I had made for a Commodore 128 to dual deck Tascam control system. It's going to be pretty cool. That project's coming up, so stay tuned. So instead of building everything that I want to do on perf board and hoping that my wiring doesn't end up looking like a spaghetti drawer, you can upload your design and have a clean board made professionally. For vintage electronics work, that can mean a real repair, a safer modification, and something that looks like it belongs inside the equipment. So help out the channel and check out PCBWay using the link in the description. And a big thanks to them for helping support the channel. Now, let's get back to the controls on this Kenwood. Next, we have the tone controls. Most people are going to be pretty familiar with these, bass and treble. Bass adjusts the low frequencies, treble adjusts the high frequencies. On this Kenwood specifically, each control gives you plus or minus 7.5 dB. So they're not just there for show, they can make a real difference. The center position is 0 or flat. Flat is a great starting point, but your room matters, your speakers matter, and your source matters. Your ears even matter. So if a recording sounds thin, a little bass can help. If a record or tape sounds harsh, a small treble cut can make it easier to listen to. If everything sounds muddy, reducing bass or adding a touch of treble might help. So now let's hear it. Now here's the sound with both tone controls flat. Now we're going to add some bass. Then back to center. Now I'm going to reduce the bass. And back to center. Now add a little treble. And back to center. And now we'll reduce treble. And back to center. So the main point is this. Use tone controls as tools, not as a personality test. If flat sounds best, great. If a little adjustment makes the system more enjoyable, that's also great. The audio police are not going to come after you for making your own choices here. Music is about what sounds good to you. Now, next on the list is balance. Balance adjusts the left to right level. Centered means that both channels should be even. Turn it left and the sound shifts left. Turn it right and the sound shifts right. Now this is useful for speaker placement, uneven rooms, and even for quick troubleshooting. If one speaker seems weak, balance is one of the fastest ways to check what's happening. Now here's center, now left, now right, and back to center. Now, if the sound cuts out or it crackles or drops one channel while turning the balance knob, the control might be dirty. It doesn't automatically mean the amplifier is dying, it may just need to be cleaned. With vintage gear, dirty controls are extremely common. Below the tone controls is a switch labeled tone defeat. Now this bypasses the bass and treble controls. With tone defeat off, bass and treble work normally. With tone defeat on, the amp ignores them. So why use it? Well, it gives you a quick way to compare adjusted sound versus a more direct signal. It's also useful if you want to remove tone control changes from the signal path. Now let's exaggerate the tone controls for a second so the difference is easy to hear. All right, now we've got the tone controls active. Now the tone defeat is on, so the bass and treble, the changes are bypassed. And now they're back. If you ever turn the bass and treble knobs and nothing happens, look for tone defeat, source direct, tone bypass, or something similar. Sometimes the amp is not ignoring you personally, it's just doing exactly what the switch told it to do. Next is a subsonic filter. Now this one sounds like something from a Cold War submarine movie, but the job is pretty simple. A subsonic filter reduces extremely low frequencies below the normal music range. So you may not hear those frequencies as music, but your amplifier and speakers still try to reproduce them. Now the classic use is with turntables. Warped record, rumble from the turntable, foot vibration or feedback can make woofers move in and out slowly, almost like they're breathing. Now that movement is not useful bass, it's just wasted energy. So the subsonic filter helps reduce that ultra low junk. Now this demo is going to be more visual than audible. So if you're following along with a turntable, watch your woofers while a record is playing. If they're pumping in and out on warped records, try the subsonic filter and see if that movement calms down. With clean digital sources, you're probably not going to need this control at all. But with vinyl, it can be genuinely useful. Next to that is the high filter. Now the high filter reduces some of the upper frequency content. That's usually to make noisy sources easier to listen to. So think tape hiss or noisy FM, scratchy records, or harsh recordings. Now this is not something I would leave on all the time. On a clean source, it may just dull the sound. But with a noisy source, it can take the edge off. Now, this is a good example of a control that is situational. It's not good or bad by itself. It depends on what you're listening to. Use it when it helps, leave it off when it doesn't. It's very technical stuff here. If it sounds worse, just don't do it. Now we have the attenuator. On this Kenwood, it's marked -20 decibels. That means that it quickly drops the listening level by 20 decibels. Think of it as just a fast volume cut. It's not quite the same as mute, but it's close enough for practical use. It's handy if the phone rings or someone walks in, you need to change a record, or if you switch sources and the level is suddenly hotter than you expected. But one warning, if this is on and you forget about it, you may turn the volume way up to compensate. Then when you switch it off, the system gets loud fast. So if your amp seems unusually quiet, check the attenuator before twisting that volume knob to 11. Now we get to the big volume control knob. On this Kenwood, the scale is marked in decibels. Now here's the important thing. Halfway up on the volume knob does not mean half power. The volume knob is not a fuel gauge. Actual output depends on the source level, the recording, speaker sensitivity, speaker impedance, and the amplifier design. Now, a CD player might be loud with the volume barely turned up, but a quiet phono cartridge might need more knob. Efficient speakers might get loud quickly. Less efficient speakers might need more power. So don't judge amplifier power by knob position. Use your ears. If the sound gets harsh or strained, compressed, or ugly, just back it down. That's the equipment politely saying, please stop.
These go to 11.
Now let's move over to the tape section. This is where a lot of vintage amps confuse people, and honestly, I can see why. The tape controls were designed for a world where tape decks were just a normal part of the stereo system. People recorded records on a cassette. They copied one tape to another. They monitored recordings. They compared the original source to what was coming back from the tape deck. Now this Kenwood gives us source, tape A, tape B, dubbing, and monitor options. For normal listening, the key word is source. Source means you are listening to whatever the input selector is set to. If the input selector is on tuner, you hear the tuner. If it's on aux, you hear aux. If it's on phono, you hear the turntable. If you switch the tape control to tape A or tape B, the amplifier expects a signal from tape deck A or tape deck B connected to that loop. If no tape deck is connected or the deck is not playing, you might get silence. The dubbing positions are for copying from one tape deck to another. The monitor positions are for hearing what is coming back through the tape loop. If you use cassette decks or reel-to-reel machines, these controls are still useful. If you don't use tape, just remember this. For normal listening, keep it on source. That one sentence is going to save you a lot of confusion. Next is the input selector. Now on this particular amp we have phono, tuner, and aux. Phono's for a turntable, and phono is not just another input. A turntable cartridge has a much smaller signal than most modern devices, and records need phono equalization during playback. That's what the phono stage handles. So it's not for plugging in a CD player, your phone, Bluetooth adapter, or streamer. It'll be too loud, it'll be distorted, it'll be wrong. Now tuner is for a separate AM/FM tuner. This particular unit is an integrated amplifier, not a receiver. A receiver has the radio built in. An integrated amplifier combines the preamp and the power amp, but you have to use separate tuners if you want a radio. That's the difference between those two things if you always wondered. Aux, that's the flexible input. CD player, Bluetooth adapter, streamer, phone with the proper adapter, maybe computer audio or another line level source. If you're connecting modern audio to an old amp, aux is usually what you're going to want to plug that into. Aux is basically the vintage amp saying, sure, bring the new gadget in, we're going to make it work. Now we have loudness. Now this may be the most misunderstood control on any amplifier. Loudness does not simply mean make it louder. The loudness button boosts certain frequencies, usually bass and sometimes treble, to compensate for how human hearing works at low volumes. At lower listening levels, our ears are way less sensitive to bass and very high frequencies, so quiet music can sound pretty thin. Loudness brings some of that fullness back. On this Kenwood, we actually have two settings. You've got off, 1, and 2. But let's try one setting just so you can see what it sounds like. Here's loudness off. Now loudness 1. And back off. So at low volumes, loudness can sound really nice. But at higher volume, it can become way too much. Too much bass, too much boom. So use loudness when you're listening quietly, especially with smaller speakers or thinner recordings. Turn it off when it no longer helps. Finally, we have the mode selector. Now on this Kenwood, the choices are reverse, stereo, and mono. Stereo, that's your normal listening. Left channel goes to the left speaker, right channel goes to the right speaker. Mono combines the left and right channels into the same signal. Now that can be useful for mono records when you're playing them back on a stereo phonograph, some older recordings, weak FM stereo signals, or even for troubleshooting. Now here's stereo. Now mono. And back to stereo. Now see, mono usually pulls the sound towards the center. Reverse just swaps the left and right channels. Now that can help if you're checking whether your speakers are wired correctly, or if you're trying to track down whether a channel problem is coming from the source, the amp, the cables, or even the speakers. Now most of the time you're going to leave this on stereo, but mono and reverse are very useful when you need them. They're not everyday controls, they're troubleshooting and compatibility tools. Now, if you've been following along on your own amplifier or receiver, let's reset everything to a normal starting point. Speaker selector on the speaker pair you're actually using. Bass centered, treble centered, balance centered. Tone defeat off if you want the tone controls active, or on if you want them bypassed. Subsonic off unless you need it for turntable rumble. High filter off unless you're taming hiss or harshness. Attenuator off. Tape control set to source. Input selector set to the source you're actually using. Loudness off unless you're listening quietly and like what it does. Mode selector on stereo. That is your basic home base. If your amplifier sounds strange, start there. Then make one change at a time. That's the best way to learn what each control does without getting lost. One thing that I absolutely love about this era of stereo gear is that the controls tell you how people used to use music systems. This wasn't just a box with a volume up and volume down knob. It was the center of the listening room. Yeah, you could connect a turntable, a tuner, a tape deck, or maybe even a second tape deck, or headphones, multiple speakers. You could shape the sound for a room. You could reduce record rumble. You could tame tape hiss. You could listen quietly with loudness. You could switch to mono for an old record, or monitor a recording while you were making it. These controls solved real problems that people had back then. Modern gear often hides this kind of thing in menus, apps, or automatic processing, and most of the time it just doesn't have it at all. There's nothing wrong with that for casual listening, but there is something satisfying about having the control right in front of you. A switch, a knob, a label, a real function that you can hear, see, and understand. And that's part of what makes vintage audio fun. You're not just using the equipment, you're learning how the system works. A vintage amplifier like this Kenwood KA-7100 can look intimidating at first. There's a lot of knobs, switches, and labels from a time when the manual was probably 100 pages long. But once you walk through the controls one at a time, it starts to make sense. The speaker selector chooses your speakers, bass and treble shape the tone defeat bypasses the tone controls, the input selector chooses the source, loudness doesn't just make it louder, and the mode selector gives you stereo, mono, or reverse channels. The big takeaway is pretty simple. Learn the front panel before you blame the inside of the amplifier. Sometimes old gear really does need repair, but sometimes it just needs the right switch in the right position. And that's a beautiful thing, because the cheapest repair in vintage audio is the one where you turn the right knob, nod confidently, and then pretend that was the plan the whole time. Now, thanks for hanging out in the studio with me today. If you followed along on your own gear, leave a comment and tell me what amplifier or receiver that you used and which control surprised you the most. Now, just a quick reminder that if you aren't subscribed, please make sure you hit that subscribe button right now. I'll wait. All right, thanks. Now, if you're into longer cuts, behind-the-scenes takes, or longer dives into some of the subjects that we look at, be sure to check out Studio Access and After Hours memberships here on YouTube. Now, until next time, happy listening.